We always highlight the stars, but it's time to talk about the unsung heroes from Saturday's victory and a look ahead to Kansas City.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Battle Red Nation? I'm Texans credential media member and Texans football analyst John Hickman, alongside the man with the big hat and the even bigger smile, Brian Steele, playoff B, Big Sarge Bearfield. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Texans and Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we take a look ahead to Kansas City. 3:30 Saturday afternoon, like clockwork, you'll see your Houston Texans try to get revenge on the Kansas City Chiefs. We also look at why DeMeco Ryans highlighted practice making perfect. Big Sarge, had a great question that he asked DeMeco Monday afternoon, so we'll get into that. We open up today's show just highlighting the unsung heroes of Saturday's victory and kind of really talk about why it's important for them to continue being those guys who are doing, quote unquote, the dirty work or may not get the recognition that the stars will. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Big Sarge,
what's going on?
We talked about Derek Stingley. We talked about C.J. Stroud. We talked about Nico Collins. We talked about Will Anderson. We talked about Kamari Lassiter. We talked about the guys we always talk about. But Monday afternoon, you had a great opportunity to ask head coach DeMeco Ryans about the unsung heroes, and this is what he had to say.
Going back and watching the tape versus the Chargers, I could name everybody on our team, right, who stood out, who contributed, and were a big part of us playing well in that game. First, I think up front, I challenged our defensive line to play well, and Foley, him being back. And that was the reason why we played well in the run game. I thought he impacted the game there. Azeez making a huge play on a 3rd and 2, physical play, getting them to 4th down. Azeez Henry was consistent with where he was supposed to be all day in coverage. Miles Bryant stepping in, playing nickel. He helped us with guys just with the communication, getting guys aligned, being where they have to be, and him just being able to do his job consistently. Just a lot of guys all across the board helped us to win this game. So that's what team football is about, and that's what you need now going down the stretch. You need everybody to contribute. And I always tell our guys, like, our best players have to play their best, right? If you consider yourself our best player, then we need your best. And that's everybody who suits up. It's our best player, all 48 guys who suit up. So I need everyone's best. We need everyone's best so we can go out and compete at the highest level.
This is the first time I heard DeMeco sound like he was from Alabama.
Bessemer.
Be exact.
Yeah.
Great question, Sarge.
Have I told you about the other people that's from Bessemer? I told you that before, right?
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah. Gucci Mane.
Country.
Bo Jackson.
Country.
And Jameis Winston.
Country.
And S. Corn. But, John, I had to ask head coach DeMeco Ryans that question because, when I asked him the question, I said, we look at the stars. We see the stars. They stand out. We know that. But there's some other standouts as well that may not get as much accolades and may not get as much praise for what they're doing. But those unsung heroes, those guys that have come in, will also do the dirty work, will also come in, and they don't care if there's some players on that team right now, they're just so happy to be on the team. They don't care what DeMeco asks them to do. They don't care what Frank Ross asks them to do, or Matt Burke, or Bobby Slowick. Hey, what do you need me to do, coach? Whatever it is you need me to do. And so when you look at the plays that D'Angelo Ross made on the special teams and the way that he was able to affect the special teams play, Derek Barnett had the big block, we've seen what he's been able to do this year on the defensive side of the ball, but he's in there on special teams. I think, if I'm not mistaken, like last year, Will Anderson Jr. played some special teams. Tank has played special teams this year. And so for the Houston Texans, it doesn't matter what the name is on the back of the jersey. It's can you come in and can you help? And so, John, there's been so much, criticism and praise because it's been up and down when it comes to a player like Eric Murray. But, John, if he does not stay focused, he could miss that interception. If he's not focused, he could miss that interception. But, I mean, he played very well. John, a guy that you have been talking about for the last couple of weeks since week 16, when the Houston Texans lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had already come into the game without Jalen Petrie, who was lost for the season. And then they lost Jimmy Ward in that game. And you have been preaching, get Miles Bryant in the game. Let him play.
Before that game.
Yeah, exactly. Let him play. Two guys that you've actually talked about, John, and Eric Murray and Miles Bryant. And so, you're just talking about those guys who are in the game, John, doing what they need to do. Those guys who come in and, they never complain about, the amount of snaps they get. They never complain about the amount of reps that they get. But, those guys really stood out. John, the Texans won all three phases of the game on Saturday.
Yeah, getting Miles Bryant to play like he did, that's important because it really started against the Tennessee Titans. We saw him play some good football. Carried over in the playoffs, featured in nearly 78% of the defensive snaps, right? And when Jalen Petrie goes down, Jimmy Ward goes down. At one point, we saw the Houston Texans move Kamari Lassiter to the inside and put Jeff Okudah on the outside, and that was immediately a bad decision. And we came on the show and said how much we don't want to see that again. Hey, DeMeco, can we see more of a natural nickel cornerback in Miles Bryant, get some opportunities so you can leave your stud cornerback, Kamari Lassiter, out there? And we saw it. And I also want to add to this before I give a kudos to the other guy. This may be DeMeco Ryans' best effort as a coach in terms of on the defensive side of the ball. You look at, 4 interceptions on Justin Herbert. That's great. They got to Justin Herbert, I think, 4 sacks on Justin Herbert. That's amazing. But you look at how it came about. And I want to transition to how big Henry To'oTo'o was in that game for the Houston Texans. And look at his numbers, 6 tackles, 3 solos. Okay.
Led the team in tackles this year, too.
Led the team in tackles this year, specifically to the Chargers game. 6 tackles. Okay, that's cool. That's nothing too crazy. But you look at how good of a job he did in coverage. And I say that because at least 7 times we saw the Houston Texans blitz Azeez Al-Shaair. Now, all year, the confidence that DeMeco Ryans had to continue to gain in Henry To'oTo'o with no Christian Harris, who only played in 7 snaps, didn't come back to the field. We don't know what's going on with that situation, but he had to get that confidence and trust from DeMeco. DeMeco had to get that confidence and trust in Henry To'oTo'o throughout the season to allow him to say, okay, I trust you to drop back while I'm sending Azeez Al-Shaair to create additional pressure. And at times when he sent Azeez up the middle, blitzing from the A gap, blitzing from the B gap, you see Henry To'oTo'o drop back and take away a lot of Justin Herbert's quick throws, those passing lanes when the pressure was getting to him. And so they have not resulted in an immediate sack. It may have resulted in an incomplete pass. It may have resulted in an interception because the Eric Murray interception, you look at Henry T, and he's right there, and it looks like that kind of threw off Justin Herbert as well. So the way that he played, average depth of tackle 5.5, did a great job of keeping whoever was supposed to be in his area in front of him, did a great job of that, being where he needed to be, did a great job of substituting himself in a zone when Azeez was sent on a blitz. Henry played a great game for the Houston Texans, and that's why I say I think this is probably not one top 3 performance from DeMeco Ryans as a play calling standpoint because he was able to disguise looks, change up how he wanted to attack this team from a front perspective, and really utilize all his guys to create pressure on Justin Herbert, and that is what led to the Houston Texans being able to hold him to 12 points.
John, I'm not surprised by this, though. I'm not surprised because when I got an opportunity to speak to DeMeco last season, before the season even started, last year during the draft when he had his interview at the podium, I asked him about being able to coach up those. I said one of the things that you are able to do is to coach up those guys who, you've gotten in the 5th or the 6th round or something like that. Those guys that a lot of people don't consider, stars coming out of college. And he said, that's what I like to do. I like to get those guys that people don't think can be as good as they can be. And I can bring that out of them. I can make them, take them up to another level. And John, I think it was on Sunday, they had San Francisco 49ers linebacker Fred Warner on the show on ESPN, and he was talking about how him and DeMeco came in there at the same time and how much DeMeco helped his career and how much he's helped so many others. Azeez Al-Shaair talks about it all the time, talk about how DeMeco took a chance on him as being undrafted and took him to the position and the place that he's in right now. But John, real quickly, when we talked about the unsung heroes, we talked about Miles Bryant. John, if you go back and you look at that game in week 16 against the Kansas City Chiefs, after Jimmy gets hurt, they have to put Kamari at the nickel slot position. And I think was it Xavier Worthy who scored that touchdown against them? And if you look at that play, when Kamari, you can tell he's not used to playing that position in the pros because his field of depth his field of depth wasn't deep enough. And right off the rip, he was beat. He had too much separation. But that comes from a player not playing that position in the NFL. Had played some in high school and played some in college, but not in the NFL. John, when you look at a player like Miles Bryant, who is a natural slot corner, who knows how to play that position, knows where to be, I think that him getting the reps in Tennessee, I think him getting the reps against the Chargers is going to help them out this time around against Kansas City.
We may need to continue this conversation a little bit when we come back before we talk about practice and making perfect. So we'll do that. Before we do that, here's a perfect opportunity to let you guys know about TurboTax.
Yeah.
This is a message from our sponsor, TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back this year, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with TurboTax experts who can help you do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes, their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert will find every deduction possible, will file every form, every investment, and everything will be 100% accurate. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates, only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Welcome back to the Locked On Texans podcast. John.
Yeah.
Practice? We talking about practice?
We got to talk about practice.
We're not talking about the game, John. We're talking about practice.
Yeah.
On Monday, I got an opportunity to speak with DeMeco Ryans and ask him about the last 2 weeks of practice that the players have been talking about so much and how they have perfected and made things a whole lot better, gotten a whole lot better throughout the season. And this last 2 weeks has been something that they have been searching for, and they finally got it. Earlier in the season, what was it about these practices that was different?
With our practices the past couple of weeks, the difference for me has been how locked in our guys have been. When our guys work the right way, it shows up in the game. Right? We have practices where we're doing a lot of repeats or guys are not quite on it, like it shows up. The inconsistencies show up in the game. So for me, I've always been a stickler for the work you put in throughout the week. It'll show up in some way, some form of fashion on game day. So I just always implore our guys our first day out, like there's no time to waste. There's no wasted reps. We don't need to waste time when we're in practice because all those things will show up later, in the week. So it's important to me that we work the right way. And when I talk about being relentless and effort and all the physicality, all the things that I preach to our guys, I want to see it throughout the week. And when we exhibit that throughout the week, it helps us to play better on game day.
There's a lot of big names. Go ahead. I was just going to say, there's a lot of the big names are going to stand out. John, when you look at the Houston Texans, and I think that it's going to start back to Joe Mixon told us before the Titans game. He said, this is the first time we've been clicking on all cylinders in practice. He said there's no repeats, there's no do-overs. We've been, everything the coaches asked us to do, we've been doing it. And you can see that on that one drive that they had against Tennessee. And then it looked as if, coming into the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, coming in the game against the Los Angeles Chargers, that they weren't clicking again. It almost like they started reverting back to some of those old habits, and then it just picked up, and we seen what the results are. John, how important is it for the Houston Texans to be able to get in a good week of practice heading into back to Kansas City, going up against a team who you cannot make mistakes or they will capitalize on it?
It's important. It's extremely important. I want to go back to the first segment really quick just to say DeMeco Ryans is something that Cody, former host, and I used to always say he's a true DC, a development coach. And getting the best out of Henry T, I think, was one of those moments where he is an unsung hero from Saturday's game in terms of as a coach, taking him from where he was as a rookie to this Saturday's performance. You got to give hats off to DeMeco Ryans, Matt Burke, and that entire defensive coaching staff. But practicing making perfect against the Kansas City Chiefs, that needs to be the mantra every day, every second, every minute of every hour while they are going through preparing for the Kansas City Chiefs. You're going to have to go up against the refs.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go up against Patrick Mahomes, who, let's face it, regardless of how you may feel about Patrick Mahomes' performance in the regular season, that's it.
Yeah.
That don't matter no more. This is postseason football. And for the last 5 or so years, he's been the scariest player to play in postseason football. So
never count him out.
You can never count him out. Practice is absolutely going to make perfect. But it also goes back to Bobby Slowick a little bit. Hey, man, that's not one bad thing. I could talk about the 2nd and 1 not running Joe Mixon when they got down there in I believe it was the 4th quarter the first time. But you look at how the game went. Okay, game started off perfect first play, right? But John Mechie fumbles the ball. Okay, boom. Look at the 3rd quarter, right? They get down there. Joe Mixon fumbles. They get down there again. Interception, call back, but Joe Mixon with the unnecessary roughness. That pushes them back to 2nd and 40. They still managed to come out with 3 points. Mm-hmm. And so with practicing making perfect, to bring it back, I just think the game plan for the Houston Texans against the LA Chargers, and I would have had on purpose.
They in San Diego now because they're on the bye week.
Oh man, they at a resort chilling somewhere. But the game plan, I think, at times, even with the chaos and disarray, the game plan was there. The game plan worked when it worked. And I'm looking at the offense in terms of practicing to make the perfect, right? You got to know what it is and stick to it. And I think Bobby Slowick did a good job. He was an unsung hero. The offense is going to have to win this game because the defense is going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
They got to play discipline on the back end. They got to be sticky. DeMeco Ryans talked about that. They got to be sticky. They got to be able to understand that even with a bum ankle, we've seen Patrick Mahomes extend plays.
Yeah.
So on the back end of that defense, they got to be ready to maybe cover a little bit longer. The guys up front got to get after the quarterback. And when you get after them, don't just unnecessary rough them.
Yeah.
But this is going to be another crucial week for the Houston Texans, and they're going to need everybody to be on their P's and Q's.
And John, can we just, hey, dear national media, hear me out. There's no such thing as rust when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm so tired of hearing about how rusty do you think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be? Not rusty at all. Anytime you got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid thinking with the same brain, like they're dangerous. They could have a month and a half off in it. They're still dangerous when they step onto the field. But John, what I'm about to say goes back to the first segment as well, as far as the unsung heroes, and it ties right into practice makes perfect. John, they weren't the best, but they are getting better. And I'm talking about that offensive line. A lot of people won't give the offensive line credit, but they did a really good job of giving CJ time, more time than he has had over the last couple of weeks. And you can see the continuity starting to build. You can see rookie right tackle Blake Fisher getting better. And I mean, he's going up against some some very, very good, defensive linemen. And so they need to be able to practice together more, build more continuity. I think CJ is starting to get more comfortable knowing that he does not. And now I will say this though, during the game, it's almost like he started to drift back into some of those bad habits. He was patting the ball a little bit. His feet got choppy a little bit. But when he settled down and realized, hey, they're going to give me the time, then he was able to make those deep plays down to Nico Collins. He also knew that he had the time because Bobby was getting the ball out of his hands quicker. And now that speeds the game up. That also helps out your offensive line.
Also, and I believe I mentioned this on the victory episode, Houston went a lot of 2 tight end packages. And one thing that I noticed in the middle of the game, the edge rushers, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, at one point in the game, their path to success, the quarterback, was a little bit longer. And I'm noticing, okay, you got Cade Stover out there helping out too.
Yeah.
You got Dalton Schultz maybe chipping a little bit. So the tight end group, I think, we give the offensive line praise. I think the tight end group did a very good job of helping out to give CJ Stroud some time, specifically in that third and fourth quarter where you really saw him kind of, sling it a little bit more. And I forgot what the numbers were, but he was nearly 200 yards when kept clean. I think the tight end group had a lot to do with that as well. It was all hands on deck.
Hey, John, I'm going to sound like a broken record because you and I have talked about this as far as keys to victory on numerous occasions. John, this week, and I know that we're going to talk about it as we head into looking ahead to Kansas City. You know what? I'll just save it for the next.
Save it. But we can't save good deals for our listeners.
For sure.
We cannot save them. So if you have not had an opportunity to buy your ticket to the Saturday playoff game, it's a perfect time to tell you guys about Gametime. And whether you want to go watch the Houston Texans take on Kansas City away, whether you want to watch your Houston Rockets, whether you want to prepare for Valentine's Day and maybe go find a cool little concert to take your girl or your boy to, Gametime has you covered. And now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with the new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Again, you want to go watch a comedy show, you can do that. It's always happening here in Houston. You want to go watch a play? Me and my mom like to go watch plays. I guarantee you I can find some cool seats at some good prices on Gametime. And the best part about it is I don't got to do no guesswork. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime. What time is it?
Gametime.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Big Sarge, we got to get ready for this week. Crossovers in a couple of days. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans rematch. And a lot of Texan fans, they want to avenge the last time they met them in the playoffs.
Hey.
2 different coaches, 2 different defenses, and 2 different quarterbacks, 2 different circumstances. But it's a lot to this game that is just not based on this year. The Houston Texans have kind of been almost there for the past 5 or so seasons, and they cannot quite crack the code. So look ahead to Kansas City. I mean, like, what really matters for Houston?
The tight end group, John. That's what I wanted to say. We've been sounding like a broken record when it comes to our keys to victory, the tight end group. And John, when I went back and I did my film study, we give Bobby Slowick a very hard time, right? About his play calling. And we've also been fair and said that, sometimes the plays will work if CJ had the time.
Mm-hmm.
John, when I went back and I looked at that, do you know how often Dalton Schultz is open?
Yeah.
A lot.
You didn't even have to go back to watch it because you pulled me to the side at the stadium
Yeah.
But hey, Dalton is open a lot.
A lot. Now, here's the question. How much does CJ trust him? Because there's been times where Dalton has not, been the best as far as catching the ball, as far as running the right routes. I mean, and maybe that is from the lack of him getting the touches during the game. But when I'm looking, John, I'm saying to myself, going into Kansas City, you have to take everything that they give you. You know that they're not going to allow you they're going to play two high safeties. They're not going to allow you to get any explosives. And so you do to Kansas City what Kansas City has done this entire season. Take what the defense gives you. That's why Travis Kelce doesn't have the big numbers that he's had in the past, because he's running 5 to 7 yard routes, going 2 more yards and falling down or finding an open space. And when you look at these plays, you're seeing Dalton in the open space. You're seeing Kay Stover in an open place. You're even seeing Joe Mixon when he's out of the backfield in the open place. And so what I need CJ to do against Kansas City on Saturday is take what they give you. And if that's a methodical 70 yards, let's just say 70-yard drive, 12 plays, and you got to dink and dunk your way down there. You dink and dunk your way down there, because now you're taking what the defense is giving you. You're tiring the defense out, and you're keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field. If you want to beat them, that is one of the ways that you beat them. Keep him off the field and take what that defense is going to give you. And John, I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunities for CJ on Saturday.
I think so too. I was trying to find the cover 2 rate for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'll probably bring that back later in the week, because that absolutely matters. And I think CJ is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL this year in terms of the amount of cover 2 looks he's seen throughout the year. He's not top 3, top 5, but he's one of the quarterbacks that has seen cover 2 in an alarming rate. And I think mainly because last year he came into the league taking those deep shots, right?
Yeah.
And that's how Nico Collins became Nico Collins in a sense. And of course he can do it all. But I like that point that you made, because the fact is, when you go up against the champs, it's all hands on deck, right? We just highlighted mainly for the Unsung Heroes segment. It was all hands on deck were guys that we may not particularly talk about. And Miles Bryant is a guy we haven't talked about for 18 weeks, it feels like. And when we have talked about him, it's more so we got to get him on the field. So when I look at the offensive side of the ball, again, we have all trust the defense going to do what they're going to do. And they're getting healthier. I mean, no Jalen Petrie, no Jimmy Ward, right? But the front seven is healthy.
Yeah.
And they just cause a lot of problems.
Yep.
The linebacker group got to find out what's going on with Christian Harris, but Azeez is back and they play some good football. Offensively, the second half is what the Houston Texans absolutely need to build up on. And I'm going to be real with you. Houston's going to need a lot of Joe Mixon.
Oh, for sure.
Because what Joe Mixon gives Houston, and of course you don't want to be predictable when you run them. You also want to be smart when you run them. You know, if it's 2nd and 5, I don't know how much I want to see Joe Mixon run out of the shotgun, but he's going to be that guy that can move the chains. You saw what he did in that fourth quarter.
Yeah. When the Chargers knew that they were going to run the ball,
knew he was getting that rock, knew he was going to tote that rock. And so Joe Mixon is the guy that can help you stay on the field, because he's a first down getter.
And John, and he's also beaten the Kansas City Chiefs, so he ain't afraid of them.
He's not scared of them. Joe ain't scared of nobody
at all.
Joe ain't scared of nobody. But my man John Crumpler put this out the other day, and we talked about it. And Houston isn't the greatest run team in the NFL. As a matter of fact, Joe Mixon has the number 32 ranked success rate. But what Joe Mixon has a lot of guys beat, okay, you got me here. You got me here. Here's a 14-yard run. Here's a 10-yard run. So I'm not saying abandon it, but what I am saying, when you know Joe Mixon is feeling it, give him the ball. Let him wear down that defense, and then hopefully you can see maybe a Justin Reed come up a little bit, or whoever, a safety come up a little bit. You may get that favorable look from CJ, and then he can maybe take the D shot, or John Metchie got to come alive and catch passes when he's getting these opportunities. Maybe cross the middle or Deontay Johnson or Robert Woods.
Bunch of Deontay Johnson. A bunch.
A bunch. We don't want him throwing no fits in the locker room. Thank you all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, give me a follow on X at John_Hickman12.
And make sure you're following me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end. Hi, Peter. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Buzz and Petty.